The episode is mixed and uploaded.
Are you ready?
Bonesaw is ready.
Quite good. Attack warning. Is it for real? Attack warning. It's for bloody real.
Live from Colorado Springs, the Drop Culture Podcast.
Want to confirm, is this an exercise? Roger, copy. This is not an exercise.
Come on, quick, get down. 1, 2, 3. Welcome, everybody, to the Drop Culture Podcast. This is that podcast where we pick up that piece of pop culture you forgot about or missed, shine it up real nice, and cram it in your ear holes. I'm Dan, by the way, and I'm joined every week
By me, Brock.
by him, Brock. Him, Brock.
Me, Brock.
I
Do
took.
stuff. I took nooks.
Yes. This is going to be one of our movie episodes. Brock, you picked out this movie, and I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think I had ever seen this.
You've never seen it. Okay. So the movie that I picked out was Nothing But Trouble.
From 1991.
1991. It was a directorial and only directorial outing by Dan Aykroyd himself. It was passed up by a lot of people, but there's a reason why. Because it just was a very big mix. Now, to say that there's not anything redeeming in it, I thought so until the fourth time I watched it this week and was like, you know what? There's some good stuff in it.
There's definitely some good stuff. There is some bones to a movie in this.
A great movie.
Well, at least a movie.
Yes.
But no, I'm just kidding. What they did well, they did very well.
Yes.
What it lacked was any sort of pulling back a story from beginning to end and making it cohesive. And there wasn't a vision that it was pretty much just Dan Aykroyd, everything that popped in his head, he did. And it could have been streamlined into an awesome story. And I think that also, and we'll get into this, that when the production company, Warner Brothers, got involved, it really started, suddenly they wanted it to be PG-13, and it was originally meant to be a horror comedy. In the vein of, I think the inspiration was
Hellraiser
for him and Weiss, right? It was him, his brother, and Weiss went and watched Hellraiser, and Weiss had broken ribs, I think it was, so he's like, I can't go see a comedy because I don't want to hurt. And then they go there and people are just laughing through Hellraiser. And they're like, well, people want this. We should do this.
Yes. Yeah, that was the impetus of where it came from. The ideas kind of sprung. But then there was a lot of personal things in there as well.
100%.
Dan Aykroyd getting pulled over, him having dreams about certain things, and then just kind of putting it in there. Now, Peter Aykroyd was the one that wrote it.
Right. And it was based off a story of something that happened to Dan Aykroyd when he was traveling from Canada to New York City. I think this was probably heyday of Saturday Night Live. I want to say it was 78 or something like that when that actually happened. And he got pulled over in a small town and was taken to basically an estate, you can't just pay your fine and go. And he ended up
for the JP.
Right.
Yeah.
And he ended up having tea with the judge for 4 hours afterwards. They invited him for tea. And he said it was just, this crazy, amazing, weird thing that happened. But then to turn that into more of a horror style, And
go
ahead.
No, go for it.
What I envision is Doc Hollywood, right? meets people under the stairs. That's what they were trying to do. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I really feel like that's the one thing that this was missing was a director. And that's not Dan
Yes.
Aykroyd's fault, because Dan Aykroyd did not want to direct this movie.
No.
He just didn't have
No.
anybody that was going to do it, and he wanted to get his story made. So by the time
John Hughes passed, right?
Well, so John Hughes actually had some interest because he liked part of the story, like some things identified with him. But then he said, I only do my own movies, like my own stuff. And that's why he ended up pushing it down. John Landis pushed it down right away. He's like, get out of here. This is terrible. Like he didn't want anything to do with it. It wasn't for him.
Get that shit out of my face.
You know who I think would have made a great director for this? It would have never happened because of the timing of when this movie was made. Tim Burton.
Oh my God! Yes, yeah, that is a very, 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 very good choice.
It wouldn't have happened because in
'89
he had the great success of Batman, so he wouldn't have been making this movie. Even though there's a cavalcade of cast in this movie. Funny story on that, because our main players in this, obviously Dan Aykroyd. Does double duty in this. He plays the judge, which is our main antagonist, and he also plays one of the Cupid doll babies, giants,
mutant babies.
Which we'll get into that. Well, there's a backstory for that too, which is really interesting. But But I think that, and then you had Chevy Chase as the lead, of course, and we'll kind of get into some with him. We had John Candy in dual roles, and then we had Demi Moore. Those are a big four, and they're on the poster for this, which I saw some of the other posters that were made for this that looked amazing. This is a big piece of crap. This one that they used is
the one that they actually used.
It was just garbage compared to the ones that they had drawn. Oh my gosh, dude! They had some amazing ones. One that was just recently auctioned off in the last few years. That wasn't used. Yeah, it was by a famous poster guy.
Probably Struzen or something like that.
I think it was some F's, like something not Filoni, but you know what I mean, something Italian.
Well, I remember when this came out. I remember going to the theater and seeing it. I'm pretty sure we did. It just looked freaking crazy from the previews. And this was 91, so we were still, this is after or during the time of Christmas Vacation.
Yeah.
So
Chevy was full swing of. We'd already had a couple of them, right? At this point.
And that Christmas Vacation came out, and that was the third one, of course.
Right.
And, he looks exactly the same in this as he did in that, so the time period is kind of nostalgic to me. John Candy, God, man, John Candy had so many good movies in a row, so many awesome things,
apparently on set, John Candy is just was I should say, just the best guy. Even in this, where he plays basically cousins, one that's male and one that's female. But they were filming him coming out, and they were catcalling at him. The crew was, and he just turned around and was like, the things I'll do for $1 million, But then he sent gifts to a bunch of the people that were on the crew afterwards. And this isn't even a big movie for him, necessarily. Oh, so it's such a cool guy.
Who's Harry Crumb at this period too? It was freaking awesome.
We would have already had Uncle Buck too, right?
Yeah. There was just John Candy he's a legend, and he always will be, and he'll just be one of the funniest guys you ever see on anything.
Then you add in beef stew, and it's amazing.
Well,
pass me that, give me more. Oh,
yeah. So you got freaking Spies Like Us, Aykroyd and Chevy Chase.
Well, and Aykroyd, not even that, because so again, if he's wanting to pitch a movie, he's already done Blues Brothers. He wrote Ghostbusters. You know what I mean? So
and Ghostbusters 2 was out.
Ghostbusters 2, absolutely. So this is his prime to do whatever he pretty much wants, and they let him.
Yeah. He was there was no director attached, and they were like, okay, well, you need a director. And he's like, I'm on it. I'll do it,
He
even
took
though he
on
was reluctant,
everything
like you said.
he really took on way too much. And that's why I think
Yeah.
that's what would have benefited this the most, is to get an established director. Not that he did a bad job, but it's just too much. It's too much for him to do that and write it and act in it, and you know what I mean? And he didn't want that.
No, to
Understandably.
concentrate on the whole thing. There's not many people that can do that and do that well. And he knew it, and he still knows it. But yet, looking at the cinematography and the shots that were made, and it's like you said, it's wonderfully done. It's not a crappy edit or anything like that, which I think the studio did get into the editing for it.
Oh, 100%. Well, I mean, first they made it PG-13 when it was supposed to be R. And then they changed the name on this like 6 times.
Yeah.
It started out, it was G-I-T. That was that was like what Aykroyd originally named it. And then what was the other one? There was I'm trying to remember the order they went in.
Vulcanvania.
Road to Ruin was before that. That was the second one. And then Vulcanvania. And that's what even Dan Aykroyd says, this is what that project's called in my head. That's what that movie's called. But whatever, they didn't like Vulcanvania, which I think is actually probably the name I would have used as well. Then they changed it to Trick House. And then after Trick House, we got Nothing But Trouble, which is really just from a throwaway line that Demi Moore says to Chevy Chase when she's all drunk or whatever. I don't know if they're drunk, but she goes and lays in bed and she jumps in bed. She goes, I need to go to bed because they're like making out. And she goes, you're nothing but trouble. And jumps in bed. That's where the title came from. It's terrible.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's Hollywood bigwigs getting involved when they don't need to. These are the people that run studios generally aren't creatives.
Well, let me ask you a question.
They're money people.
How many? And I don't mean to be one way or the other. Warner Brothers has made a lot of great movies.
Oh yeah.
But how many of these conversations throughout different periods of time have we had about Warner Brothers getting involved in their movies too much?
It's just a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's almost too much evidence. But I was going to tell you, based on the 4 main actors in this movie, I mentioned this to my daughter. Shout out to Jaden. It was her birthday yesterday. But I said, yeah, it's got Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, John Candy, Demi Moore. She's like, I know who one of those people are. And I was like, who's that? She's like, Demi Moore. And I was like, I failed as a father. I failed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Dan Aykroyd's been in so many different things, and he still continues to do so many great things. Chevy Chase fell off the map, not too long ago. Really did kind of screw himself over by being such an asshole, which
let's get into
I think
we should probably get into the production of this movie with Chevy Chase, because everyone on this film...
Let's just...
Go ahead. Hello?
No, you were skipping there for a second.
Sorry. Joining remotely through the interwebs. No.
Yeah.
So everyone on this movie, like, what was really cool, what Dan Aykroyd did right, he did get some good actors. I mean, if you can add John Candy and a Demi Moore and even Chevy Chase, if he wasn't such a douchebag at the time, and we'll get into that. But he got really good people on the crew side. Like the best people, like Dean Cundey that worked with Spielberg. He worked with him on Last Crusade. He worked with, you know what I mean? He worked with a lot. He worked with John Carpenter. You know what I mean? So he put all these people that were just awesome at what they did around him for that part of it. And you can tell in the sets.
Yeah.
You can tell.
But that's respect.
But what was cool was he was like, any idea they had, he'd listen to them. Mm-hmm. And like, in fact, one of them came and said, hey, I used to go to this restaurant with my grandfather or something, and they had a train that would bring the food around to you. And he's like, cool, let's go talk to this guy and see if we can get some money for that. And they went and got $15,000 to do that. You know what I mean? It was like all this stuff, like the drawbridge. They had a real drawbridge that they built on the set. And I want to say that the town set is High Noon. town set that they used.
Yes, yeah, it was on the back lot. Yeah, the Warner Brothers back lot.
Exactly.
High Noon was because they turned everything that looked like an old West Town into something somewhat modern.
Right. And then I guess the Teamsters were real super sad because they were smashing all these cars they'd buy from these salvage yards and stuff that were like classics. So like they were all like, oh, well, here goes a 57 Chevy, kind of a deal. They were very sad about that because they were buying out salvage yards left and right, dude. And then I can't remember how many toasters they bought. It was a lot of toasters to go in those piles of junk.
Well,
like it was, and then he even makes a comment when they're driving through there. Look at all those toasters, or something like that. You know what I mean? So I thought that was funny, a little meta.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was a lot of little things that were thrown in that I don't know that might have been more, how do you say, ad-libbed, like most of the
Improv,
stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, he's like, oh, look at that folk art. And he's like, oh, well, folk 'em. It's just little bitty things like that didn't really necessarily need to be there, but you could tell that it was like, hey, that kind of goes. Yeah. And Dan Aykroyd is probably one of the best dudes in Hollywood, and he's highly respected. So anybody's going to be like, hey,
unless you're Chevy
I'd want to
Chase.
work with you. Yeah. Yeah. Unless you're Chevy Chase. And Chevy Chase even did the same thing too. He was like, well, I get a chance to work with Dan Aykroyd again. I'm going to fucking do this.
That was his reasoning. And then he was a big douchebag on set. And even like, even the crew said that they came in one time and he was yelling at Dan Aykroyd and telling him about how he didn't make as much money as Chevy Chase did, even for the movie that he's making. You know what I mean? He was just a cock from what I hear. And that's what everybody said, that everything that I read from people was he was the one constant as far as like, everything else was good. You know what I mean? Like as far as the feeling of the show. And they were like, Demi Moore, for all the stuff they put her through, was a real professional. And that was early. She had just done Ghost when she started filming this. It hadn't come out yet, because this was originally slated for Christmas of 1990. And then it got pushed back to 91.
Oof.
And
yeah.
The reason he got away with everything that he got away with, because they gave him a $40 million budget for this movie in 1990, which is a pretty good budget. You know what I mean? That's not terrible.
Yeah.
And it was 45 when he was done. And I guarantee he spent most of that on just crazy, like hydraulic chairs and all the things that we saw, the desk, all those kind of things. It was a lot of practical effects and things.
I do like the practical effects in this, which were tremendously good. And like we were saying, I mean, it's a labor of love with that stuff, and you can tell when people are like, half-assing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of relying on special effects. But I mean, come on, look at the freaking Bonestripper.
The Bonestripper.
It's like it was a whole ride.
It was. Like they bought part of a roller coaster, an old roller coaster.
Yeah. That's so rad that they were just like, yeah, you know what? We're going to do a good job with this, and we don't really need that much. And yeah, they had the budget, but that they probably didn't really spend a lot of that on that crap, Well, they were just like, hey, we got it. Let's do it right. Let's make it look cool.
I think they had, I don't remember what the guy's title is, the accountant guy for the show. I don't remember what his actual title is, but I'm sure many times they probably had that guy in tears. But Warner Brothers was like, yeah, because they were like really hyper focused on Bonfire of the Vanities, or Bonfires of the whatever that movie is.
And
that I've never seen. It bombed as well. But that was their big focus. And then it was supposed to take, I think, the place of this movie as the Christmas film. December film. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
So they were so focused on that, they weren't paying attention until the last minute, and they're like, oh, crap. We had Dan Aykroyd. We let Dan Aykroyd go crazy with $40 million, And it's not like he wasn't dolomiting them. He wasn't like buying a house and come hang out on my pad.
Yeah, he wasn't doing that shit. He was actually using it. And I mean, that's why I remember it being such a big movie. with the previews and everything, seeing it on VHS, previews coming soon,
For sure.
everything like that. I could just always remember it. And it kind of has established itself as a cult movie because a lot of people realize what it is. A lot of people have seen it. A lot of people kind of hold it in some sort of regard for it, even though critics and, of course, the studio probably paid most of the critics to hate it.
Well,
So let's bury this shit.
Here's the thing I see. Dan Aykroyd had great ideas within this. And I think that there's two things that you need as a creator. For me, specifically, like I would want someone else that is a writer to read my stuff, that's written lots of scripts, you know what I mean? To give me like a good feedback and maybe rework, like they do a lot. Secondly, you would need a director. Those are the two things that would have made this movie probably a hit, you know what I mean? If you think about the same, like I think one of the pitches that they kind of talked about was Beetlejuice meets Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it would be done in that vein, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you cut out all the horror. Like they had filmed some and I guess it was very, what's the word I want to use? Campy horror. You know what I mean? To some degree. But they cut all that out. And I think that part of that you lose any intensity for sure to make it any sort of horror. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then there's probably half his lines where I'm like, Chevy Chase is just reading.
Well,
he's just saying stuff.
That was him, and is described that some of these people look like they were embarrassed. They're just doing it for a friend, and they were kind of embarrassed about it, but they were there because they were with their friend. And Chevy Chase was probably the one because he was a jerk, a lot of the times to everybody, that he was just phoning it in because John Candy really wasn't. He didn't seem embarrassed, but he doesn't really seem fully committed. You know what I mean?
Okay.
When he is the guy, whenever he's the constable or whatnot.
Okay.
He's very, very low key, but that might be what his character was,
right.
And he wasn't putting like a lot of extra stuff into it. In the same way with, the female part that he played, it wasn't horrible.
No.
And it wasn't like supremely memorable, but yet it was still good,
Still John Candy.
You could see Demi Moore was really doing a lot of extra work, and really, of course, Dan Aykroyd was doing the most of everything. But even the little bit roles that they had and everything, it seemed like everybody genuinely wanted to be there, but it was like, I don't know what we're doing.
Right.
Which again, well, let's get into the cast here. Chevy Chase was Chris Thorne, which was he was a financial publisher. Dan Aykroyd was
Banker.
Judge Alvin J.P. Volkenheiser.
Yes.
Shire Reeve,
He is, he is our small town justice of the peace.
Yeah. And then you got John Candy as Dennis. And what was her name? Eldona.
Yeah, Eldona.
Yeah. And then Demi Moore.
And Dennis, just so that we, like when we start getting the story to make this easier, he's the basically constable of the town.
Yeah, he's the main cop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we meet his cousin later.
Yeah, and then his cousin is like the best mechanic in the tri-state area.
Her sister, whatever she is. I don't know.
Something like that. And then you got Demi Moore. She is a lawyer that's kind of, I don't know, going through a hard breakup.
Yeah, a breakup with somebody that she worked with professionally, obviously, at the same time, that she represented on the lawyer side, I think, from what I gather.
It was but they were also seeing each other too.
Yeah, exactly.
At the same time.
So that breakup was hard, and she needed to get to Atlantic City, and we'll get there.
Yeah, it was somewhere in the Poconos or something like that. Whatever the fuck the Poconos are. And then you got Valerie Broomfield. She was the other cop in there, which she always plays a very good character.
A cousin, because that's how it works.
Yeah, exactly. It was all family there. Taylor Negron.
And hold on, because Valerie carries an M16 through this entire movie.
No shit. Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, damn.
But she's like tough as hell too. Even after they bust him, and she's got that deal. John Candy is really nice and calm and everything, and of course she's not.
No.
He's like, just stand down. Taylor Negron, he's one of the Brazillionaires.
Yes. From the Last Action Hero fame.
His sister Bertilia Damas, it's like they popped up at the very beginning. They were the first characters that we see pop out of the cab.
Yeah.
And they're going up to Chevy Chase's place. There's a couple of other faces that you see, like Raymond J. Barry. He's been in a lot of different things. A good bit actor. Brian Doyle Murray, of course, is in there.
Daniel Baldwin
as himself, pretty much.
As dealer number one.
The exact same person that he is in real life, probably.
Probably the most important thing about this movie, besides everything that we've talked about, this is also Tupac Shakur's first movie.
Yes.
Digital Underground is in this.
Yeah. You notice that. Okay, so Humpty is a character, right? The guy with the nose from
Shock G.
Yeah, he is a character, but yet he shows his real face during the song, that they play. They play a song, he shows his real face, he's playing the guitar, and then they turn around and it's Humpty, right? And you never see him again, but it's really cool that it was another dualistic kind of person playing a dual character on screen, even though he was a musician. So it was like a weird coincidence to me, like a weird kind of
a thing.
Yeah, because Dan Aykroyd was playing two characters, and Chevy and John Candy was playing two characters. So it was like even their musical guests had two character person.
This is what I think about. I think about Tupac like later, right? Like let's say 96, 97 Tupac. Could you imagine that guy being on the set of a Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase, John Candy movie? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's just happy to be doing something, and be on, he's doing his craft, doing his deal. I couldn't imagine him being on the same situation, like Poetic Justice style.
I was about to say Poetic
Bullet.
Justice.
Yeah. Wasn't it Bullet?
Yeah. Gridlocked or something.
Well, the one with Mickey Rourke was the one I was thinking.
Oh my God. Oh yeah. Never mind. I forget about that.
And then speaking of which, Shock G passed last year, so just throwing that out there. We lost a lot crazy. We lost a lot of really a lot of rappers last year, actually. Shock G.
Well, he went all around the world.
Yeah. He did.
All around the world.
Same song. Anyway, so Tupac's first movie.
And that's pretty much, Peter Aykroyd was in it. He was a doorman at the very beginning.
Right.
Then there was all the other bit actors that they had in there. Even Danielle Aykroyd, she's always like his daughter. Is usually in a lot of different movies with him. She was in a movie the other day that I watched with Dan Aykroyd, and his daughter was in it. Oh, is the new Ghostbusters. She was in it.
Oh, nice.
She was one of the police officers. Yeah. And maybe it was Danielle. I don't know. But okay. So we probably need to give the synopsis of this movie. So let me hit you. Here's basically just the breakdown. A financier, Chevy Chase, agrees to take a lawyer to her business meeting. On the way, they run a stop sign in a small town in the middle of nowhere and are arrested. But the courthouse and the prison are a maze of zany booby traps and deadly contraptions. The antics of the captured couple as they try to escape from the mad judge and his bizarre family make up the rest of this unusual film.
Yes.
That does kind of tie everything together.
Yeah.
The tagline, all they wanted was a little getaway. All they got was nothing but trouble.
By the way, just said we didn't throw it out there. Well, I did have a budget of $40 million. It only made 8.4.
Wow. That was
say that before we get started.
That was like a tap in the nuts right there. You know, it's like, hey, you're going to fail, but like, pow, whoa.
But I just don't understand. If you're pretty much betting on it failing anyways, just let it be what it's going to be then. And maybe, you know what I mean? That's where I'm at with it.
I really think they put probably a lot of that budget was marketing too. Because there was a lot of marketing done for that movie at the time. Yeah. I just remember it being pretty big. A lot of those first run movies would come out and you're like, oh, from Warner Brothers, Nothing But Trouble, starring Chevy Chase.
That's where I was probably
Demi Moore.
I'm probably not going to see this.
Okay, so let's start this out. Just very simple. They're in New York City because you get the big flyby, nice big orchestral opening and everything like that. And then, of course, Chevy Chase pops out of a cab after the Brazillionaires. You know, he starts talking to the doorman. And he's like, "Oh, somebody having a party?" He's like, "You are." He's like, "Oh, I am?
Am I having a good time?"
Yeah, we just ordered. Yeah. We just ordered 5 cases of that champagne. That blah blah blah. He's like, "Oh, must be expensive." So it's already in this little witty banter. Right. He goes in.
You're establishing his wealth right away.
He gives the doorman like a stock tip, and he's like, "Yo, my wife said that was up 5 points." He's like, "You want another one? Want some more advice? Sell them." And he's like, "Oh, so he's pretty good with money. You know, he kind of knows his way around everything. He's just probably got more than he needs, right?" Sure. So he's going up to basically his penthouse where they're having the party, this very, very nice place. And the Brazillionaires stop because they use him as their financial advisor.
Right.
You know, and they're kind of all over the place with him, and he's got that cigar and he's like, "No, wait." And then Demi Moore shows up all in white. She was in white at the very beginning with the 2 dogs.
Yeah.
What happened to the fucking dogs? You know what I mean?
They just left them in the apartment.
Yeah. So he's like, "Oh, hubba, right?" Mm-hmm. And so he's got to ride in the same elevator as her. And you can, and those people that are running in, hey, Chris. Mm-hmm. And he like ignores them and lets
just
the door
gets
shut.
In the elevator with her, yeah.
Yeah. And she's got an espresso machine, a whole bunch of papers, and the dogs.
Yes.
Right? And a bag of shit.
Yes.
Yeah, she's got a little bitty green bag of poop. And she hands everything to him because she sees his paper that says something about what she's involved in.
Right.
So she starts crying before she sees that. And then he's like, "Oh, okay, thanks for the espresso maker and the bag of shit." And
yeah, but my penthouse if you change your mind.
Yeah, if you want to come up and visit. So she goes into her apartment, of course, and it's all hell's breaking loose. She's like, "No, I got to be there for this." It's at Atlantic City at some buyers meeting or something like that.
Yeah, it sounds like whoever it is cutting her out of the deal, sort of.
Pretty much, yeah. So she's a lawyer. But yeah, she's involved with this guy that has this really big real estate deal in the Poconos or whatnot. And so she eventually is like, "Oh, it's Chris Thorne, so I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to go talk to him." She gets into the party, and of course, he's walking around kind of like, "This is my house. There's a party going on." Ooh. I guess he was drinking a Coke or something like that, too, because she shows up and she's like, "Hey, remember me?" He's like, "Oh, yeah." He starts putting the moves on her and everything. And then she goes, "Can I borrow your VCR?" No. Can I borrow your car? And he's like, no. How about I drive you? She's like, "Well, you don't have to do anything. Can I just borrow your car?" Which is kind of a weird thing to ask,
A person you met like an hour ago?
Yeah, can I borrow your car to take it to Atlantic City from New York? Cool.
And just the Poconos is a resort area in Pennsylvania, by the way.
Ah, okay. At
least that's what I've never known what Poconos
I've always heard about it, the Poconos.
That's because everything we watch is based in New York City.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Those
that's
people
where-
escape to the Poconos. We escape to
fun.
outside.
To the mountains.
Yes.
So he agrees basically to take her, but the Brazillionaires over here is like, all right, let's take a road trip.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, yeah, we're going to leave at like noon, because he tells her, yeah, they're Brazillionaires. They won't wake up until after
Like till
noon
2
or something
like that.
Yeah. Their breakfast is at 2, so.
And that next scene
of
where
course,
we're in the garage,
yeah.
right? And he comes in and he's like rough.
Hung
Chevy Chase
over.
is hung over, and the dude goes to get him his car and all that. Which, by the way, I would be mad if he drove my car like that.
Yes.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care at all.
He's like,
and he's about,
like, here you go.
He hands him the keys and says, "Let her know, that I'm out and she can use the car."
I'm not gonna do it.
And he turns around and there she is in slow motion.
Putting on her shoe or some shit like that,
and-
right? All in white again.
Yep, and he's like, and
he looks at the doorman. He's like, keys. He's like,
Yeah.
here you go, Mr. Thorne. So they're about to get out of the whole place, because she's like, oh, this is a cool car. Oh, what's this? And he has
she
like a
seems
GPS.
to know more about the car than he does, though. Like this,
Right.
She's like, this is a 3.8, blah blah blah.
Yeah, he's like, oh
sure.
yeah,
sure.
it's a classic. Yeah, I love this car. And then of course the Brazillionaires are waiting outside the garage.
Yeah, as soon as the garage door opens, you get to see them. Damn it.
He's like, oh shit. So they both hop in. They're like, you're being a bad host.
Here, I brought this tape. Play it.
Yeah, I know, right? They get in the back. Here, play this tape for us. Let's get a little funky. So they're taking this really boring ass trip.
So let's stop the movie right there. Could you imagine if from this point on, this was like California? With Brad Pitt and Winona Ryder? Is it Juliette Lewis? Winona Ryder?
Yeah, Juliette Lewis.
Juliette Lewis, yeah.
Yes. Oh, that would be weird. And they're like, hey, let's just take a ride. I made a picnic for you. Like, picnic? That's weird. I'm going to cut your eyeballs out.
Yeah, and then so they have to veer off and go find some place to go have a picnic.
Yeah, I get it, because she's like, oh, we made a picnic for you. Why you got to be such a bad host? You're a dick. And he's like, whatever.
So Demi Moore figures it out. She's like, we'll just
Yeah.
go here. It won't get us that far off the highway, blah, 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 blah.
We'll still make it in time. Yeah, we got plenty of time. They got to be in Atlantic City at 6:00, so she
Yeah.
can basically just like bust in and be like, "What are you doing with my money?"
Yep.
Something,
Something.
all dramatic. And of course, she's kind of playing along with the Brazillionaires. He's kind of bored, and they go through this little bitty town, Vulcanvania.
Yes.
And it's like disgusting. It's like a mining village or something like that.
It's a mining village, and there's obviously like cracks in the earth where it's exploded through, and that's based on a real place. Centralia, Pennsylvania, is the town, and it used to be a town. It's a ghost town now, but the same thing happened. It has the cracks coming through of the earth and the fire and all that. So there you go, some fact base. That's really happened.
Yeah, there is a couple of places that have fire raging underneath their streets and shit that nobody lives on.
Coal fires, that's why. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so fucking weird.
Yeah.
And like the whole place is stripped.
But this is where we boogie through the high noon.
Set,
and
he almost hits like a statue in the center of town and everything like that. But then, he runs a red light, or he runs a
stop sign. Yeah.
So that's when the cop starts to go. So they're going down the road doing normal, and
the Brazillionaires are like, go, like when the lights kick. So
they freaking goad him into it.
Turn on from the cop. And they're like, yeah, you're in a BMW. Act like it.
Yeah. They goad him into going. He's
do.
like, okay, he's trying.
I
to
know this
impress
can go
them,
90, and he's like, you can do 130.
Yes.
Sorry about your
the
penis, Chevy
suey.
Chase.
So of course, the cop catches up with him even after he's going like
Because
90.
he's
He's
got
like, "What are you
boosters.
doing?"
He's got boosters,
Yeah.
and he's got buttons that make detours happen. Like those walls come up, and then so they have
Yeah.
to turn, which obviously leads
Yeah.
them to, the trap where his cousin's waiting with a shotgun or a machine gun.
Well,
Rather.
it's weird because they're still mining over there. Like there's all those trucks and everything that they're weaving in and out through.
He says
and
later
it's-
on, the judge does say later on that they sold a bunch of their stuff, like back in the day. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And, well, I
His
mean,
dad,
they're on.
I think
and,
it was, yeah. To a drilling company.
Yeah, and they're or the cops saying something like, hey, you shouldn't be driving that fast through here, blah blah blah. And they
Over
finally
the
get
speaker,
cornered.
over the PA.
Yeah, yeah. They finally get busted because his cousin's waiting there. He's like, driver, would you please step out of the car? And of course, he's like, oh, was I speeding back there? He's like, no. You're actually in trouble for running the stop sign back in town.
Which he never tells anybody about the high-speed pursuit chase.
Yeah.
He's like, that's not the problem. The problem was the stop sign. But I think that kind of here is where where John Candy has kind of given up a little bit. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't want to be doing what he's doing, as we find out later. But I think this kind of foreshadows that just a little bit. Or at least once you see the rest of it, you can, like in hindsight, be like, "Oh, I see."
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. He really does do. He really does kind of. His heart's not in it anymore. Yeah. He's like, "Come on," and then they pull up, to the Shire Reeve, right? Well, he's like, "Hey, most of the time these things don't last that long, so you'll be out of here in a second. I'm going to recommend that." But when they're driving up, they get to see all this really weird folk art, like the drawbridge is up, and they get to see like the thing inside the river or whatnot,
swamp or whatever,
whatever the hell that is. Yeah, all the toasters, the dolphins. He's like, oh, so that's where they buried Flipper, and you can hear the Brazillionaires. Brazillionaires. Flipper's dead. And there's a tie to another movie in this that we've done too, and you'll immediately remember it whenever I say it.
Okay.
The big statues with the big faces, like the Tool.
Yeah,
things.
yeah, the Paul Bunyan looking dudes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That same face is in another movie called Freak.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Rasta eyeballs are in that thing.
Yep.
Rastafari.
Anytime you need, do you think about that though? That's a quintessential I've been hoarding stuff in my yard for way too long kind of salvage yard kind of a place. You know what I mean? Across this great nation, you will find those.
I would love to have one of those in my backyard. That would be awesome, wouldn't it?
I would murder somebody. No, I don't want one of those in my.
I would love it just for a bird perch.
It just means I got way too much crap.
I just want one of those.
If I had
a big wrench,
if I had my 100-acre wood, which I would have 4 of them, one on each corner of my woods, as guardsmen. Yes,
nice.
But then I would probably like dress them and stuff in different weird shit. Like one's a Jedi.
Yeah, why not? Have fun with it.
Yeah, he's got a big glowing lightsaber that lights up at night. Yay!
For Christmas. It's for Christmas. So they go into this weird maze of car parts and funky shit and smokes everywhere. They end up at the front door of this place that was founded in like 1890 something, right?
Yeah. It's the Courts and Schools.
Yes, it's all one building.
Yes,
it's all one building, and they're just like, because Chevy Chase, of course, tries to bribe his way out of it.
Yeah,
just wants to pay a ticket, but they're like, no, I'm sorry, that's not how it works here. Blah blah blah. So they get into the courtroom, and they're still making stupid comments like, "Lucy, I'm home,"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Ha ha, that's funny." Don't worry, we'll be out of this here in a minute.
And Demi Moore's like, just shut up.
let me do the talking and I'll get us out of here. He's like, okay. He doesn't, of course.
Well, not only does he
know,
not do that, like Demi Moore is like connecting with the judge when we get to that judge coming down, which comes through a hydraulic hole in the ground or a hole in the ceiling on hydraulics. Ropes, I guess it was actually kind of straps. Down. And that's our JP, whatever his name is, Judge
Volkenheimer.
Heiser, I think.
Volkenheiser.
But
it's a kangaroo court,
It 100% is. And he's like, give me the IDs, give me anything. And he just kind of throws it up there too. John Candy does. And somehow he catches it all in his one hand. Like I don't. That's what a cut.
Well, he can't see him at all.
Oh no, because you just see him behind the books on the desk.
Yeah, and you could tell he's really old. He's like, give me their report cards. They're speeding, this and that. Their lottery tickets or something like that.
Right.
He's like, here you go. They were caught running a stop sign. He's like, okay. He's looking at him. And who's Christopher Thorne? And he's like, oh, that's me. He's like, oh, you look like a banker. And he's like, no, I'm a financial publisher. He's like, oh, banker.
Yeah.
He sees the two Brazilians' passports and everything like that. And and of course he kind of strikes up the conversation with Demi Moore. And they're really kind of, I don't know. It's kind of weird before he kind of yells at him and says, that'll be the day that the cat's eyes spin, and he gets up and he yells at him and he looks grotesque.
Yes.
He looks he's 106 years old, I think. He's freaking old as hell, right?
He is.
And he looks gross, like totally like falling apart. Gross.
Yeah.
No hair, liver spots everywhere. He's just disgusting, right?
Gross.
And he does the hula, 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 he kind of dances really quick for how old he is. I don't know. It's weird. And he starts being a freaking complete asshole.
Well, and then he tells him the maximum punishment's death. For running a stop sign.
I was like, holy crap. Right. And he's like, okay, well, we're going to have to, we're going to have to hold this trial over.
So Demi's having the conversation, and that's when Chevy Chase, I kind of feel like Chevy Chase was just playing himself because he just lights up a cigar.
Yeah. Aykroyd's like, put out that dog rocket.
And that's when he's like, okay, that's fine. You guys are staying, until tomorrow.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then he pushes the button.
Yeah, they're underneath like the freaking. That's their jail cell.
It's like the Jabba thing.
Yeah,
like Jabba the Hutt, he pushes the button and it opens up, and you go to the Rancor monster. Except for in this, you fall into a pit of rubber animals. Like
right.
Weird.
Yeah, it's like squeaky toys.
Yeah.
I'm like here, and well, what's his name? John Candy recommends that Dennis recommends that they just fine on let him go, right? And he's like, no, he kind of gets angry at that because he's a banker, he thinks,
Right.
So they get down there and Demi Moore knocks the shit out of fucking Chevy Chase. They get into that argument down there, and upstairs, John Candy Dennis is talking to Judge Alvin.
Yes.
Shire Reeve. And basically he's like, my responsibilities end at this desk, and he's like, well, you better watch yourself or you're not getting anything from the will or something like that. Right. Is until you're running this town, or until I'm dead, I'm running this town. And then whenever I'm gone, you can run it however you want to.
That's right.
And he's just like, oh, okay. He just really doesn't, you could tell he doesn't want to be there.
Right. Well, and as we find out, for good reason.
Yeah. Well, so the next part of it, basically is,
they get invited to dinner.
They get invited to that weird freaking dinner, but is it before the Bonestripper? The drug dealers or whatnot.
I don't remember where that slots in, but no, that makes sense that we saw the drug dealers too.
Yeah.
And then they have the same kangaroo court.
Yeah, but they're like, they found all kinds of drugs, everything like that. And that's
like a flour bag of cocaine.
No shit.
I was
Right?
like,
It was
you know the street value that's on the desk right now?
No shit, right? Because they're all just drinking tequila and driving really fast. And he's like, have you been drinking tonight, son? He's like, yeah. So, and then of course, they hold the court again,
Right.
like you said, and he comes out and they're like, oh my God, his nose looks fake. They're all smiling and laughing at him and shit. He's like, so the maximum penalty is death, and they're all right up next to the dill, and he clicks it on, right? So they're still downstairs and they can hear it all going on,
Right.
and they basically get ramped out into the weird
roller coaster. They're on a roller coaster that takes them to the Bonestripper, which is really looks
and
like
it's nothing
pistons.
but like pistons.
Yeah, pistons going back and forth. But that would suck, depending on how much pressure those were. That would definitely strip some bones.
Yeah, you get to see how it was put together by this really badass engine. And it's got like the whatever differential, or I don't know, the rear end, in it.
Everything's got fire.
Yes, and it's just going
and
off.
And they play that song.
Yeah, and he's yelling at him too over the intercom.
It's a bone stripper.
Yeah, it is a song just about bone stripping. And he's always got those controls by him, so he can do whatever he wants to.
Right.
He's
in the trick house. See how it almost got named that?
Right. So they end up. All their bones get shot at a target. So there's just nothing.
It's awesome though, because when they hit the target, it makes noise like they won.
It's like ding, ding. And there's a lot of bones. There's
a lot of bones apparently in 4 people. A lot of
a
big
12,
bones.
Yes, but there's also there's a pile that's 7, 8 feet tall too.
Huge bones. Huge amount of bones.
So of course they hear some noise
in this movie.
So the prisoners downstairs, Thorne and all of them, they hear the noise and they're like, oh my God, they're going to come kill us or something like that. Right. So of course the door opens up and it's Dennis's cousin. Right. And basically she's like, come on, it's time for supper. So they end up in this nice, big, giant place. Right.
Right.
Where they're all sitting down.
The table. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, Judge Valkenheimer shows up, and he has one of those oil things that you used to put in oil cans, to
puts
open
on
them
Hawaiian
up.
Punch.
Yeah, he's all, how about a Hawaiian Punch? And of course, Chevy Chase is like, you know what? After a long, hard day, I always want to sit down with a nice, warm glass of Hawaiian Punch. I remember when they used to come in that shit. I remember juices out of those things. It was so crazy.
Even as a young adult, I used to get V8 a lot. And my mom was a dietary manager of a place, so she would order them through her work for me, like in the big cans like that.
Yes. Yeah, we always had juicy juice like that. Juicy juice.
Juicy juice.
But so they're sitting around the table, and of course, at one point he looks over at the judge, and it looks like he has a penis on his nose.
Yeah, it changes,
for real.
And then throughout the movie later, it does change back and forth to
yes,
penis
it does.
nose.
Yeah, even at the very end too.
But when he first sees, you're locked on that as a penis, my friend.
Well, yeah, of course, Demi Moore's sitting there. They're talking, she's trying to butter him up and everything, and the Brazillionaires are freaking out, of course. The cousin's like, hey, you want some ants? Or no, Dennis is like, hey, Diane, you want some ants on a log? Which is, it's just celery, peanut butter, and raisins.
Right.
And everybody's
That's probably
had that
the safest
before.
thing you could have at this meal. Because
Right.
we're
And
about
she's
to get
like,
the dogs.
ooh. Yeah, so she has to do it all real campy like and everything, And then he's like, all right, dogs are served. And she's like, they're serving dog? Like, no, hot dogs before they had night games, They're from purebred Herefords or something like that.
Yeah. Which really they're made of people.
Yeah. It's just and of course, you know,
they're all gross looking.
And he just has a piece of bread that they throw it in, right? Of course, Aldona, his cousin, you know, Dennis's cousin,
her, right? Pretty much.
Yeah, this where she kind of comes in, and he's like, "This is, you know, my granddaughter Aldona. She's the best mechanic in the tri-state area, or blah blah blah, right?" And she even holds one of the hot dogs and shakes it, you know?
Especially when she's giving it to Demi Moore specifically. She's like shaking it in front of her face.
Yeah,
like that? You
and
like
she's
that dog?
Then she's making eyes at Chevy Chase from across the room, you know, and that's when Vulcanheiser or whatever, the judge pops up that train that has all the condiments.
Eat your dogs like me.
Yeah. Hey, pull up a dog and eat them just like I do. That's how I recommend it. And
it's like a condiment train.
Oh, it's mayonnaise, ketchup, and mustard on a piece of bread with the hot dog, and he's getting it everywhere on his face. Gross. Just even more disgusting, right? So, of course, the Brazillionaires freak out. They're like, "We're getting out of here. We're not doing this," and they jump out of the freaking window. So they're running away.
Hold on, right here. This is the best decision that's made throughout the rest of this movie, maybe through the entire movie. There is no repercussions from them jumping out the window. They're not hurt, and they get away.
No. Yeah, they both freaking land, and they're totally cool, you know.
And then they have to swim through that. Well, they swim through that little like river or whatever, the oil river, coal river.
Well, they have that. Yeah, they have that running joke. Smells like Sao Paulo.
Yeah,
you know. It's like, don't open your mouth, you know.
And then, of course, they get across, and there's Dennis already waiting.
Yeah, he smoking a cigarette. He's like, yeah. And they're like, hey, we got money. We're billionaires. We can do whatever we want to.
Looks like you could use a vacation.
He's like, actually, you know what? That's right. Because they're saying they were going to go to like the Bahamas or something if they got out of there or something, take a vacation. And of course he hides them. And that's the last that you really get to see of Chevy Chase for a while. Or not Chevy Chase, but John Candy for a while.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So of course
and the Brazilians. We don't see the Dennis or the Brazilians again for quite a while.
No, for the rest of the movie, pretty much, right? Yeah. And so, of course, you know, they take their napkins, Thorne and Diane, and throw them at the judge's face to kind of blind him, right? And they go running out the deal, and he's like, whatever. And he locks down the front, like it's like a mall kiosk. It's like, whoosh, bam, right?
Because he's got all the buttons and controls.
Yeah. Of course, Aldona grabs her by the neck, and they're like, all right, you're confined to your room for the rest of the night, right? So
she grabs each one of them by their necks.
Yeah, and is taking them up this big giant staircase, right? And the whole place is just full of newspapers, crap. It's just a hoarding junk house, you know what I mean? It's literally just full of absolute junk.
I swear, when they're taking them up the stairs, Chevy Chase is walking upstairs, and he intentionally kicks like one of the things down the stairs. Like, I'm like, that didn't even look like it meant, you know what I mean? Like it. Yeah. Well, they get locked in a room that's just full of nothing but newspaper crap and all this other stuff, right? Well, and then come to find out, that's not what's all there, right? Isn't this the room with all the IDs?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. No, this is You're right.
Yeah. So they're chilling, and Demi Moore's like crying and freaking out because she's not going to make it down there. They kind of get into that little juxtaposition right there, and then of course he sits down by her because she's crying, and she starts kissing him. It's like, I always get mixed up with the wrong man.
I don't know why it happens, and then she's like kissing all over him and making out. Like he hasn't even instigated anything, and she's just
awesome. And then she's like, I need to go to bed. So they both lay down. He's awake.
No, she walks away and jumps away, like she jumps onto the bed, and that's when she said, "You're nothing but trouble."
Yeah.
Boom. That's how we got the name of this movie. Go on.
Right. so, so they're basically just like chilling in bed. She's asleep. He's awake.
Mhm.
And so he curls up next to her, right? Kind of starts spooning her. And then we get to see the picture of Aldona, right? And it's got the eyeballs, but it's somebody's really watching. So they're just like totally chilling. Then the bed starts spinning around with a giant freaking bell on it, which would scare the absolute shit out of me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's heart attack
And then
time right there, brother.
right. So they wake up and then the door opens and they're like, all right, we're free. Let's go. So they're so they're actually getting out of there, right?
Yeah.
They open one door and there's a big giant like a room full of bats.
Yeah.
And it's got a
big pile
giant
of guano.
right, just right in the middle. God, that place has got to stink, you know, just from that.
It's the
you
bat
know?
room.
Yeah. Yeah, bat room. And so they're trying to make it through all this shit, right?
Right.
But then that's whenever, you know, they get to the last door, but the thing is moving at them. Like
Right,
one of the walls
is coming like a trick house.
like a Scooby-Doo place or some shit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They're getting Scooby-Dooed. And then they almost get crushed and they jump into this weird kind of room. And it's
he like shoulders the door in, basically.
Yeah, so they get into there and they're kind of just like, holy crap. That's when they end up upstairs.
That's right. That's where they end up at the next part of upstairs. Yeah, the attic, right?
Yeah. Basically, so they're upstairs because they're rooting around everything. There's nothing really going on else in the house. I guess they're just putting them through this, or it's Dennis letting them out, kind of giving them a way out. Because honestly, they did have a way out. You know, Demi Moore actually finds it.
Yeah.
You know, kind of towards that on the slide, but they go separate ways, right? But while they're up there at the very, very top, they're like, I'm going to take a fucking break. I don't give a shit, you know? So they're smoking cigars and they notice that all of these IDs are everywhere. It's just like, full of thousands and thousands of IDs.
With the ID is a clipping from the paper of where that person disappeared or whatever. Jimmy Hoffa's there.
Yeah, Jimmy Hoffa's ID, like killers, senators, bankers. There's all kinds of IDs everywhere, and they're like, they've been doing this for years now. So we got to get out of here. So yeah, they're chilling, and then because they get herded basically. Because whenever they go upstairs, that's when the safe almost kills them.
Correct.
You know, yeah, and then whenever they're trying to escape this part of it after that,
that's where she finds a slide, right?
Yeah, they go down the slides. So she goes one way, she goes to the right, he goes to the left. She goes outside,
and he goes
which
to
that
a pile
was freedom.
Of bones.
Yeah, he ends up in a pile of bones inside the wall.
Yeah,
which is weird.
Of the judge's bedroom.
A huge giant hole in the wall full of bones falling out, and the judge is like getting ready to go to bed. So he's like, I always was a handsome little devil. And he pulls off his hair first. Yeah, pulls off his hair first, and then he pulls off his freaking nose, and it's so gross.
And then he pulls off his leg.
Oh yeah,
that he lost in World War I.
I left that leg in Germany. So of course he lays down, gives a couple of little farts and everything like that. And Diane is outside. She does the little pratfall, like boom, you know. And then that's when the band gets pulled into the court, right?
Right, because when we see her, she's kind of hiding behind stuff, and she can hear people doing something. And
yeah, she's listening.
He's watching the judge bedroom basically, and that's when he gets the phone call, right?
Yeah, the judge gets a call and he's like, "Oh, all right, you know, I was just asleep. I'll go down there." So he sits on his little chair that lowers him and kind of takes him everywhere, right?
And then who is it? Who do they bring in?
And they brought in, you know, Digital Underground.
That's right.
Yeah, it's all of Digital Underground too, like everything. And of course, you know, he's sitting down and they're like, whoa, like even the one dude pulls off one set of sunglasses for another one underneath to get like a better look. He's like, whoa, so they're all just like freaking out. He's like, what are these guild cards? What are you guys, mine workers? And he's like, no, we're musicians, man. And he's like, oh, for real? And of course, that's when, the bad cop, the cousin cop is like, yeah, we found all this musical equipment on them. It's like, okay,
And then he's like,
so
gonna have to bring that in here and set it up.
right. But that's, isn't that whenever, because the judge goes, yeah, that's right before that. Because of course he goes downstairs to go, the judge goes downstairs and Chevy Chase gets out and starts looking through his shit, right?
Right.
Sees all this weird stuff and then sees his gun, right? But then the judge pops back up and he's like, hey, you got my gun.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, I forgot my gun, before he actually goes into court.
That's
right. So of course him and Chevy Chase get into a fight. That's when he hits his leg and he's like, I left that leg in Germany. So they're getting, he's, get your feet out of my bedpan, all this gross shit everywhere, right? And so they eventually, Chevy Chase gets out because he's attacking him with the bone too,
right,
versus the cane, and he throws like the weasel at him or whatnot, the stuffed animal, and of course he makes the turn and he hits freaking Chevy Chase, or not Chevy Chase, but John Candy straight in the chest, falls down, and then he's like, well, now, since you were the first man to touch her, guess she's yours. And he's like, what? What are you saying? So of course, that's when he gets into the court with the Digital Underground, right? So she takes him to her room or something like that to get ready. I don't know what it is, what she's doing, because obviously they're going to get married. That's what he's implying.
He's all chained up, like cuffed to the feet, to the hands, and all that.
He's got all of that going on.
And she's like on the other side of a screen. She is on the other side of the screen showing underwear. These? No.
And he's like, no. Shows the other one, and he's like, yeah. And she's like, naughty, naughty, So of course, somehow, the cousin ends up in the room. You can't see him on your special day, so he takes him into the courthouse, and that's when the Digital Underground gets into their song.
That's right.
All around the world. So I mean, they're like literally like jamming out, playing their songs, right? It's like hit the beat,
judge hits a button, and then all of a sudden you see his organ behind him. And he jumps in. Apparently, Dan Aykroyd had a great time doing this with them too. Like even some of the production people were like, "Yeah, that ran a little bit long, but he was having a wonderful time."
Well, yeah. I mean, it was really cool, and even what he was playing, was pretty cool.
Yeah.
They went with it, and they're just like, "Whoa," And Chevy Chase is like trying to bite the chains and rip them apart and everything.
Well, and it's even as like when he dismisses them. He's like, help me. No, these people are crazy. And he's like, I was nervous on my wedding day too.
Yeah. I'm sorry, man. I was nervous on my wedding day too, And then of course, that's when we kind of find out, we already found out that the bankers came in, sold him a lot of stocks to his father. They were worth shit, so he's always hated bankers, and that's one of the deal. And then they made a really poor investment back in the day. That's why he wants to kill all bankers. So he's already got that fire in him to really actually hate him. But then he's like, you know what? I could grow to love you because you're gonna be my grandson-in-law or something. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So of course they're getting married now, Eldona and him.
Yeah. Is this where we cut back to Demi Moore though? Like,
that's right.
Yeah.
She's outside with Bobo and whatever, because she's like sneaking in
Little
the
Devil
deal, because she hears
whatever his
voices.
Name is.
Little Devil or something like that.
Yeah.
So they're actually working on a forge, but they're all greasy mutant children.
Yeah, they're like
with like baby faces and baby heads,
but they're giant and fat.
Yeah, and they're like, "You eat too much cereal. We couldn't finish school because we were too fat."
Apparently, that
So-
was also based on a story that Dan Aykroyd knew, like somewhere where he lived as younger, up in Canada somewhere. They had 2 kids that weren't allowed in the house because they were too fat.
Yeah, and just they're disgusting.
Right.
He's like, "Give me the ball peen hammer. I know what the ball peen hammer is. It's
got
the
your-
one with the round end. Why don't you forge?" So yeah, of course they catch her. Dan Aykroyd's the main one. He's like, "Ooh,"
Yeah, he's
Bobo.
Bobo.
So they actually catch her, and then who's out there? Is it Eldona that catches her too?
Yeah, I think because wasn't she? No, was it
No, it's not. It's not Eldona. It was the cousin.
the
I
other
guess.
cousin? Yeah.
She's out there, yeah, looking for
But
her.
I thought at
because
one
she
point
disappeared.
Aldonia was like cutting up the car when she was out there.
Yeah, she was out there, kind of at one point, just kind of working.
Maybe
I guess,
yeah, somewhere right before all this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so they got her they capture her, and they're
she
like, "All
becomes the
right."
lady in a cage.
Yeah, and she's like, can we keep her? And he's like, "Oh, whatever." You know what I mean? So they're like, "Okay."
So then they play
So
cards.
that's when that's when they go inside, and Chevy Chase is basically in front of the desk again. He's all done. He's like, I want to go home. Just let me go. And then he clicks on the deal, and it wheels him out to the Bonestripper. Right? So, of course, that's like right before or right after they were playing cards, right?
Well, yeah, because
Bobo
didn't we have the
and-
marriage scene before he puts him out to the bone stripper?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because she runs off because he insults her and everything
Right,
like
right.
that. You don't
'Cause he-
insult my granddaughter on her wedding
Well, he's
day.
like, kiss her, kiss the bride. And he's like, no, not in front of everybody.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah. Ugh, it's so weird. So basically he gets up to the point where they're about to strip, and he's like, "No, I swear to God, I'll do whatever." And the conveyor belt is still running, but yet the bone stripper, the whatever you call that thing, the
drive
crankshaft.
shaft, yeah.
Yeah, the drive shaft like breaks right on that shit, and he gets to go through, and he's just fine.
Right.
He's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm
Kinda-
just fine. So
Kind of like the dudes from Ice Pirates.
yes, yeah, exactly. Wow, how did we pick 2 movies with the same kind of scene?
Ah. Divine
How did
providence.
that happen?
Surely wasn't
So he
because
gets-
we thought about it.
Right. He gets shot out of that little weird bone cannon too, and lands
Yeah.
on the pile of bones. He's
but
like,
it-
"Ugh,
but
this
he's
is so
fine.
gross."
He's just covered in bones.
Yeah, he's still cool. So he's trying to get away, right? So he's running through everything. She's playing cards with him, playing slapjack or something. You know,
Yeah.
he's like, "If I win, I get another bowl of cereal.
I get Diane.
If I win, I get Diane." And she's like, "No, let's play again."
No, Bobo wins because his hand was on top.
Yeah, Bobo wins. Yeah, she's like talking to him like little kids, you know. And so basically they're out there doing all of that. The Reeve comes out because he knows that basically she's out there. He's like, "Hey, if you come out now, I'll let both of them go," because they have that weird freaking contraption with the 3 like
Those
snow
3
blades
yeah, that
on the-
Aldonia's been building.
and it cuts all those watermelons, which is crazy, right?
Right.
And of course Diane's like, "Save me, blah blah blah. I hate you. You need to come help me." And they're like,
No,
"Sorry
he-
about this, Diane."
Doesn't
this
she
is-
tell him to run?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
she's like,
yeah,
run.
Well, whenever that's the funniest line to me is whenever she's like, "You guys need help," and he's like, "You guys need to see a psychiatrist," and she goes, and Bobo's like, "He wouldn't go." It's like they tried. You know what I mean? That's so funny to me. And so of course Thorne is on top of a whole deal of old school. What are they? What do you call those things? washers.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Old school like 30s washers or something like that, right? Whole bunch of scrap metal. Because he even does mention that at the dinner table. Thorne is like, "Hey, I noticed you got all the scrap metal out there. You can make a pretty penny." And he's like, "There you go.
If you're
Hey,
making
you bring
money
a
with your
banker
banker
in?
brain.
Yeah, you're gonna figure out how to make some money out of it. Just like you." So of course there's all that shit, and he's like, the judge is like, I'll let her go if you come back right now.
Right.
And she can go scot-free. I won't do anything to her. And of course he starts this little weird countdown and everything, but there's like a fuel truck or something, and he soaks his jacket in it, right? Kicks a rolling deal because he's got the lighter because he's a smoker,
right?
And it makes that big giant explosion. He goes in to rescue,
pulls her off just
Eldona,
in the nick of time.
Yeah, no shit. And then like they roll off, right? Because Eldona's about to like drop it, right? And she can't catch him because she's behind some sort of invisible barrier. You know what I mean?
There's all these controls in front of me. I don't know what to do.
So she's just as wicked as her grandfather.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She took after her grandfather. So they're running through the deal, and he's like, "So, what kind of games you play in Atlantic City? Blackjack?" And of course, right? That makes no sense. The whole place is exploding, but right before that part, you get to see where the judge knocks his cane into the ground,
right?
And it's all glowing red. And he's like, "See what they did?" And it's like burning his cane and shit, right?
Yeah.
So everything's volatile, like big time volatile. And of course, so they're basically kind of running from everything.
Well,
they find his car.
Don't they?
No, not yet.
Yeah,
not yet.
Okay. Oh,
she found his car earlier,
right?
And she can't start it. So she's like, "Well, shit. I can't start this car."
Yeah.
So basically they're running from those guys, and they get to the moat, right?
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, it smells like Sao Paulo." Makes the same joke.
Right.
And then they hear the train. He's like, "Head for the train." So they actually head for the train. They're running. She's got heels on, right? And
yeah,
she's
the
running
whole
in gravel.
movie she has heels on and runs like the Dickens.
That's gotta suck.
Yeah, no doubt. And then they jump the train, basically.
Jump the train. The evil cousin can't shoot them, so they're gone, and they're like, and the twins are like, "Bye, Diane." I like to do their voices, and so they actually make it to a populated area, right? The next day,
right?
And they're at like the State Department or some shit like that.
They're like
right?
talking to all like probably the sheriff's department, I would assume. Something like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like the state troopers, sheriff's department, everything like that around there, probably in New York. So they're kind of telling them, "Oh, that's where this was. We were smoking a cigar at this point, and they got all these IDs, blah 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 blah." They're like, "Okay, well,
and they go in
to get
these
force. People." Yeah, to get these people, we're gonna have to bring you. And they're like, Chevy Chase at first is like, "No, I ain't going back there." And then of course Diana's like, "Let's do this. Let's get it over with. Let's beat them down for good." And they're like, "Whatever." So they actually end up, going in sweats and shit like that, right? and they're at the front door, and they're like, "Hey,"
and there's like army personnel carriers going through with them, like
everything. and they're so they convince them, you need to go up to the door. You need to get them to come out. So they go up there, and he's like, "Why are you bothering an old man?" He's like, "Don't look behind you. There's a bee's nest." And they're all like, "Hi, Judge." So there's like hundreds of cops and everybody like, "Hey, what's up?" He's like, "Hey, boys, good to see you."
And the one guy's like, "Yeah, we can't. We're happy with the way he does it or gets it done or whatever,
Yeah. He's like, "You know what? He's been doing it for years, and you know what? We leave him alone." I'm like, "What?" That's when everything starts to freaking like blow apart because everything is sinking into the ground.
Yep.
Big time. Everything's dying. And so, of course, you get to see the whole place go up. They find his car. She's like, "I can't start it." And he's like, "Don't worry. I had a kill switch installed." What?
As you
a
do
fuel
sometimes.
cutoff switch or
Yeah,
some shit like
yeah.
that. It was just like, what
Plans
the
on
fuck?
going fast.
I guess.
And
So
making mistakes, I
maybe.
guess. I don't know.
Yes. So they do eventually get away. So they think everything
Yeah,
is
and
over
that
with, right?
the building falls in on itself. Things are exploding everywhere. So you're assuming all these dudes got they're done. Most of like the judge and all that.
They think they got out of way, but the next scene that shows up, you see Fausto and Ronaldo, right?
Yeah,
With
Dennis.
Dennis.
Yeah. On
And
the
that's when
beach.
you get to see they're he's like, you being our personal bodyguard, you could do whatever you want to.
Yeah, our head of
you know?
security.
He's like,
yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, all right, cool. And they're all drinking and shit. And then the next
Well,
final
and then
scene,
come to find out, he's with the sister because he says something, puts his hand around her, and then she moves his hand to her ass.
yes, that's right. That's right. So yeah,
So
he's
Dennis
gonna marry
and the
a
sister
billion.
hooked up. Yeah, the Brazillionaires.
Yeah,
Brazillionaires.
Brazillionaires.
Yeah.
So the next scene, of course, Chevy Chase is having a bad dream. He's laying on someplace. I guess they're in New York or something like that. And of course, Diane wakes him up, and she's like, "Oh, I'm about to jump in the shower. Everything's over with. Everything's gone, right?"
You're
But then the
fine,
TV shows, yeah, the
like
the
newscast
whole
from
Vulcanvania,
Yeah.
falling in on itself. So they're going around because the whole town, I guess, went under, and they show some dude in a blanket, old man, and like a bigger woman, right? They're going through stuff, and they're like, "Sir, how does it feel to lose all your stuff?" And he's like, "Well, we're sad about it, but now we get to move to New York City and live with my grandson-in-law."
and he has his
And
ID.
Yes, and that's where he has a dick nose again too.
Yep, absolutely. And then because they couldn't think of an ending for this movie, and that's fact, they could not come up with an ending for this movie that they liked. They went with the Mel Brooks / Mel Blanc
jumping through the wall.
Jumping through the wall in the shape of his body because he sees that guy coming.
Yeah, and he's like, "No, you're not." And then Demi Moore's stuck in the shower.
Yeah. What a dick.
Yeah. He leaves her high and dry. But that's it. That was nothing but trouble. That was a fucking weird movie.
My favorite part is when they pull into Vulcanvania originally and they see the guys on the motorcycles and they're just drinking like liquor out of the bottle.
Yes.
On the motorcycle, like just hanging out. And I'm like, damn.
He says something like, it's the Jolly Green Giant and Mr. Clean or something like that, right? What? You get to see it's just some weird shit in that movie. It's just all over the place. And like you said, maybe if it did have that good director to lead everybody,
I think
everybody was following his lead. Yeah, everybody was following his lead.
Well, and everybody liked him and what they were doing. You know what I mean? With the exception maybe of Chevy Chase. But as far as the crew, they were like, we would all move heaven and earth to work with him again. That's how much they loved it. You know what I mean? But again, he kind of played into their, you want to do that? Let's do it. You want to make that? Let's make it.
Yeah, right.
So he was a crew director, the crew love him.
I think that's where, of course, if you're a good person and a good actor, you're good to the people around you, people will do whatever.
I agree.
I just don't understand how people don't see that. It's so simple.
What? The golden rule
treat everybody
to
right.
Life? What?
What?
So, what do you think, Brock? I know this was a movie you had watched. This is my first time. What do you give this movie?
You know what? I'd give it a 2 out of 5.
Okay.
No joke.
Okay.
Just because, like I was saying, there's hardly any redeeming qualities about it that I can really kind of just name. But at the same time, just kind of pointing out the fact that it was a labor of love for everybody. Everybody enjoyed making it. Makes it enjoyable to know that.
Yeah.
To know that, somebody like Dan Aykroyd, which has never directed again, gave what he could to it, turned it into what it was, and it was ultimately destroyed by the studio, which again, countless movies that we've done
And I think
have destroyed these movies.
I think even before that, though, like he just had too much going on in that movie. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I agree with that. I will give it 2.5 bone skinners. I really liked the sets. I think here's what I want. This is what I want out of this, and I can give it a better rating, perhaps. I would like to start the hashtag release the Aykroyd cut. But really what I would like to see is like, I think this could be remade, and I'm not big on remaking movies, but this is the kind of movie you do remake because it's not popular in the zeitgeist. It's not like I was saying, I'm going to remake The Thing. Fuck off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But this is a movie you could remake with that same vision to make it an actual comedy horror and not just a kind of spoofy comedy rant. Or a ramp.
You're right. I mean, it could be a good vehicle for somebody up and coming, to be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and try to do what this movie set out to do.
Yeah. And then have Dan Aykroyd on as a producer, use his original script, and then you can make some different changes if you want to. And then, which I think there's probably some minor things that I would change in that to make it more cohesive. And then, I would really lean in on those sets again, though, Like I said, if you had somebody that was a visionary style, like we talked about a little bit with like a Burton or somebody back in the day, would have been perfect. So now you just have to find a new version of that.
You could still use Tim Burton. He'd do it.
Maybe.
Maybe.
You're like, Tim Burton, you're not going to make any money on this job.
He's like, I know.
He's like, I got plenty of that.
Yeah. This is a movie that could be redone very well.
Well, and I think if you think kind of like that, though, like what we were talking about is Doc Hollywood meets People Under the Stairs, and really kind of lean in on that more, I think that you could make a funny yet real horror movie, kind of in the vein of Chainsaw Massacre 2. You know what I mean? That dark humor, that,
Yeah, which it's a little bit more serious because that is Chainsaw Massacre 2 is a lot like this fucking movie.
It really is.
A lot of the ideas, like the bones in the walls and the weird fucking everything, the gross things.
The giant baby mutants that apparently Aykroyd was just having dreams about. And that's how they got in the movie.
It's so weird.
But definitely, I think this movie, as a first-time watcher, you definitely watch this movie. Because there are some cool parts. There are some, it's not great, but there are some cool pieces to the movie. I should say that.
Yeah, there's not a lot of redeeming qualities for it, but you know what? It's pretty cool. It's just one of those that I remember from forever ago. I remember the campaign. I remember them shitting on it. I remember everything about that at that point.
This is one of the few movies, generally, I'll watch a movie, and then I'll do my research, and I'll watch it again, and I'll do my more research. I kind of flipped everything on this one. I actually did all my research first, and then watched the movie. I've watched it twice, but it was kind of interesting to go into it that way, because then I was like, oh, well, let me catch these. I can glean different things that I would have even known about.
Right.
Usually I try to get that first reaction, like I'm just watching a movie for the first time, just because of our schedules and, the COVID break and all that stuff. This I did opposite. So it was interesting. I don't know. I'll probably go back to my old method, though, of watching it first, doing my research, and watching it again. Because I think that maybe I already had a better opinion of this movie for certain things before I started, and then I was like seeing those things, you know what I mean? So it slanted me in a positive direction.
sometimes, you know what? Every once in a while, I'll do the same thing. Like, but it's not because I haven't seen it before. Kind of like in this case, but it's more of a, oh yeah, I've seen this before. I've seen it a lot, so
Right,
I'm gonna
right.
read about it while I'm watching it.
Sure, anything that
and then
I've
kind of
seen
research
multiple
it.
times, then I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter. But when it's a
Yeah.
movie I haven't seen before, sometimes
Yes.
it's cool to get that initial reaction. This was just a different way of going about it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's just one of those fucking movies, man.
Penis noses everywhere.
Penis noses.
Gross sausage.
It's weird. It is just fucking weird.
It surely is.
But yeah,
I think that is nothing but trouble. So
nothing but trouble.
If you haven't seen this, check it out. Let us know what you think about it. Let us know if we're crazy for saying that it should be remade, or at least I am. And Brock didn't say that. I said that. I'll take it on the chin for that one. But yeah, let us know what you think. And where could they do that, Brock?
At dropculture.com.
Yes.
Dropculturepodcast@gmail.com. Drop Culture on Facebook, Drop Culture on Twitter, Drop Culture on Instagram.
I'm
Drop
feeling
Culture.
there's a theme here. Like if you just put Drop Culture in things, then we come up.
Pretty much.
Too
And if
easy.
you're listening on your favorite platform and you don't see a lot of ratings, go ahead and give us one of those. That is pretty cool. You know what? That's a movie we want to see, is a ratings.
No, you don't.
What?
This is lies.
That's just dumb.
But if you feel like it, yeah, drop us a rating and review. That'd be super cool. But I think with that, we're going to wrap it up for the week. Brock, it's been exciting to have you back. I'm glad you're feeling better.
Oh, yes.
Shout out to all of our friends on the internet. Good to hear, for you to hear our voices. How about that?
Yeah, how about that?
So with that, I think, peace.
And we're clear.